The Atlanta Hawks are an interesting basketball team. They're a team that Quinn Snyder is a good coach. And on some nights, it seems like they're a few pieces away, really a defense away, from being a decent, competent, competitive basketball team. But on other nights, they don't look as hot. And obviously, we know they're going through this whole Trae Young less experience. I think it's like going to be like the longest time we haven't seen Trae Young with the team. And we're seeing DeJounte Murray kind of get the reins. We're also seeing some Bogdanovich. And I think it's interesting as they're 28 and 34, I believe, after tonight. They're the 10th seed. They're 3 games in front of the Nets, who are the 11th seed, and they're 2 games behind the Bulls for the 9th seed, and they're basically 7 games behind the 6th seed. They're a playing team through and through. And that's where it gets interesting. Because when for a team in Atlanta that they're right now, obviously not having Trae Young is huge, okay? But just DeAndre Hunter looking like the guy that they hope for, a guy who's going to be a utilitarian in terms of how they were going to use him, a Swiss Army knife, 16.5 points, 3.5 rebounds, 1 assist a night, which is actually low because he's actually a guy who can pass. But yeah, and he's shooting like, it's pretty crazy. Like, it's actually pretty crazy to think about his play. And it's not just that. Bogdan's been another guy that I think is looking really good. And also off the bench, DeAndre shooting 53% from the field and 46% from 3 on almost 5 threes a game. And for them, also, Bruno Fernando is like a super competent basketball player. Sadiq Bey also had a great night. Some nights I don't even know if it's worth keeping Clint Capella. Other nights I'm like, yeah, you got to keep him for long term. And that's a big thing that I look at when I look at this team, guys. Let me pull up the stats. Of course, I looked away from my sheet or my screen. They are the 8th best offensive rating. Quinn Snyder, you got this offense humming. They're 28th in defensive rating. Jalen Johnson's fantastic. DeJounte Murray, he's not the defender that he once was. That's either due to a lack of interest or maybe, just age and injuries have led to that. But he's still a guy who can create. I mean, he had 9 assists tonight. He's a guy who can be an impact player. And for them to be able to go against yes, I know people are going to be like, well, this was a banged up Cavs squad. And it was a back-to-back. I know. I just think it's interesting because you have the pieces. Trae Young and DeJounte Murray, it doesn't work, but it does work at the same time. If I pull up the Hawks lineups by teams, if we're going to cleaning the glass right now, ladies and gentlemen, which right here, per cleaning the glass, we're going to see it's definitely, it tells a story. Now, defensively, what is their best? It's hard because I guess their best is that Onyeka Okongwu, Jalen Johnson, Sadiq Bey, Bogdan, Trae Young, because they only allow 111 points, which is 62nd percentile. And then they have, and then the rest of the ones are too skewed. And they're really playing their best ones, like having Sadiq Bey out there and Jalen Johnson, DeAndre Hunter is what is needed. And those are their best defenders. Okay. Yes, Trae Young and DeJounte Murray are a few of those, but I think it's going to show that they really don't have guys that are going to come out and rock the boat or make the defensive stops that they need. And for me, I think that's the biggest thing with the Atlanta Hawks right now is when we look at them, I think it's a problem where, okay, we have a core. DeJounte Murray can be flipped. I'm not worried about that. You got to keep Trae Young. The thing is the blueprint for a player like Trae Young to be on a team that's successful is you need a 6'7" shooting guard. Well, when you went on the Eastern Conference Finals run, I'm not saying he was a good defender, but he actually is a decent rebounder. Kevin Huerter, you had a 6'7" shooting guard. So my thoughts is, obviously OG Anunoby got traded. He's gonna stay in New York. But if they were able to get a shooting guard who is 6'7", I mean, if they went for Klay Thompson this offseason, I mean, he's not the defender he once was, but that's the idea. Okay, you keep Sadiq Bey, you have Jalen Johnson, or you keep DeAndre Hunter and you put him back in the starting lineup next year. You have Jalen Johnson right there. You have between what I just said, who was the shooting guard, let's say Klay Thompson, who's still, like, when he tries, kind of a plus defender, kind of. Klay. And I don't think this is possible, but it's just the idea of them getting a guy who's a defensive shooting guard who can also score. Obviously, OG would be the perfect guy. That's not going to happen, nor is Paul George. I don't think really any super good two-way shooting guards, swingmans are going to be available. So, but if they can find that 6'7" or above, or 6'6" and above, that they could put next to Jalen Johnson and Sadiq Bey. They keep Bogdan as a great 6-man. Trae Young's there, okay? You move Clint Capella, you start Onyeka Okongwu, then you go get yourself, at this point, maybe you draft someone, draft like Deron Holmes, okay? Or maybe you go for a run for Nick Claxton and you have a Claxton Onyeka rotation. I think it could be cheap enough. And I think you got to fill out the roster with defenders. That's what I would do.